Hello, and welcome to a little paint session here that I've got going. Thought I'd try giving this a shot. I'm Dale the Casual Gamer doing some casual painting here and trying to check out this live streaming thing. So thanks for those that are checking in. Basically just thought I'd go over a process, got a new game in, Ascension Tactics, and thought I'd go ahead and paint some of the miniatures for this game. So this is a deck building game that combines area control and combat, and of course has a lot of miniatures in it. So basically the process for painting for me, I do what they call tabletop quality. So it's not going to win any contests, but it does provide a little bit more table presence when you're playing the game. So let's go ahead and look down at the comments here, or the contents of what I'm meaning. So for tabletop readiness and painting, basically these are some miniatures that I bought that came pre-painted. So this would be kind of in that scenario there. So this is a D&D mini. This is from Pathfinder. They're pretty, they're really good quality. I'm impressed with them. So this is kind of what I'm looking for. Like I said, it's not going to win any competitions. This is from Blood Rage. So these are some things I have painted. So I was kind of glad with the way I did this flaming sword on this, but you can see kind of the process of what I'm looking for with some of these miniatures. And then, of course, quality. This is Games Workshop miniatures, so they definitely have a lot more detail. And all this was done with contrast paints. Just taking a look at some of those to see what you can expect in the process I use. And as far as the miniatures for this game, this is the way they come. So they're kind of a off-white miniature. There's some good detail, and they do come with a black base on them. So what I've already done on some of these miniatures is I've primed some and went ahead and painted the base black again. So it almost looks like the way it just came straight out of the game box. So some other things we're looking at here when you're getting set up is different types of paints. So what I have is a bunch of contrast paints. So taking a look at those, these are what I'm basically using for these to make the process a little bit easier. Also have some shades in here if I use some regular paints. So this is all Citadel type paintings. And then if I just want to use some normal colors, I've got some game color paints that I use for that also. And then down at the table, some of the things we'll need. Of course, we're going to need some brushes, just a whole bunch of different sizes of brushes is what you're going to want. There's a whole bunch of different palettes people like using. This is a palette I've been using. Basically put the paint on there and just grab from that, but it does dry your paints out. It's not the best method, but it's the method I've used for years. So there's also dry palettes, which is great for mixing some of your paints together. And then last night I started out with a wet palette. Basically, you moisten up this towel underneath and put something on top of it, and then you can put your paint on that and it will last a little bit longer. So with all that out in the process, we can start looking at the miniatures and what we want to do. So I've got some of these in here. So this is one of them that I definitely want to get done somehow. So that's the miniature itself. So as far as, I'm going to turn on some light here so I can see better. This is what the card looks like. So it looks like it's basically going to be a whole lot of white with some gold trim on it. So looking at the mini, the trim isn't as prevalent on that, but I'm just going to try to do a white contrast paint on that and see how that ends up looking, and then go into the next step. And let's see here. So taking out some contrast, Apothecary White, give that a good shake. And usually for these, I don't use any palettes. It just goes straight out of the bottle. So just open that up. See what brush I feel like using, since I'm going to basically this is a thick brush that's simple to use. And we're just going to put some paint on it and get started. So like I said, what the contrast does is it's going to find all the creases and kind of highlight those things. So you can just go in there with the heavy coats and kind of move things around. And you can already tell it's bringing out some of the textures in there, giving it some depth. So depending on how much effort you want to put into this, I mean, some people, this is the only coat they do. It just brings out some details. And just put on, I put this on generously and just move it around with the brush. It's also harder working around the camera when you're trying to do this. I figured I'd give it a shot here. Just curious if anyone out there, if they're new to painting, if they're painting some miniatures right now, what kind of paints they're using. So it is a bit time consuming. I got the game, well, 2 days ago, came in the mail. Pulled it out and have to make the decision, do I want to put it to the table first or do I want to get some of the miniatures painted? And I chose to get some minis painted. Have read through the rules a little bit. Game seems pretty easy to get to the table. Of course, I'm used to this game from just the basic card game, which is one of the reasons why I backed it. I love a good deck builder. So I'm hoping to get that to the table maybe this weekend with my game group. I know we've got some other plans to play Nemesis. So I don't know if this will make it to the table then. Of course, we won't be playing with painted miniatures, that's for sure, because I've still got some of that work left to do. But it does come with standees that we can use. So one thing you do have to look out is for if this starts going in the cracks, you don't want it to sit in those cracks and pull too much. I mean, we definitely want to show some depth in there. And so just looking around, not too bothered about the sword blade. Probably going to paint that with some silver. All right, let's see what we've got in here. So most of the textures are out. Got a little bit of pulling in there, so I'll just use the brush to get that out. Off to the sides. So, I mean, this is probably good enough for some people just to quit right there at this step. But we're going to let him dry there and take a look back and see if I want to put some gold highlights in there or what else we want to do. So I've got a little water container. Try to get this color off, and we'll go ahead and break out our next miniature and start putting on a coat of that. So I usually work on several miniatures at the same time. Because once again, I'm not going so much, I'm not going to win any competitions with this. But it is going to look a little bit better at the table when we go to playtime. So the other miniature, I also like starting with the easier ones, is Prime. I'm not sure what that acronym stands for. But since we're looking at the cards, it does show his strength, how much fight it takes to get him on the board and activate with him, and his health. So if he takes that much damage or more, he gets kicked back and has to come back out again. But he just looks like a big metal winged beast. So that's going to be fairly simple for me to paint. What I'm going to do on that is he looks to be standing on a rock. So I'm going to get a gray contrast for the rock. Then I'm going to paint him probably silver or metallic silver and come back and put a null oil shade on top of that to bring out the depths. And I think that's going to be all I do with him. So it should be a fairly easy process. Of course, I don't want my cards getting painted on. So for this one, using the contrast, I can't pronounce everything. It's some type of gray. Give that a good shake. And a little bit smaller of a brush on this one. So this one, don't know what, there we go, Army Painter brand standard brush. Just a little bit of paint on that. And just because of the way I'm painting this, if I do go outside the lines, that's a big thing. It's like a coloring book. How happy are you with going outside the lines, and how are you painting it? I'm going to come on with a standard paint here in a little bit. So if I go off, like I just went off on his leg there, just so you know, I've got some nerve damage in my right hand, so it's hard to keep it steady. And I'm definitely not talented enough to go left-handed on this. Main thing is I just want coverage. So the little rock there, we've got that kind of done. I feel like I've got that covered the way I need it to. So already done with that. And wash this off. Hey, how's it doing, Circado? So this is your kind of painting? Nice and easy. Very casual, just like the way I play games. Actually, I'm a lot more casual in my painting than I am in playing games. Thanks for stopping by. So we've got that. So what I'm looking for now is Game Color has some metallics. So they've got a polished gold, a gunmetal, and a brass. I like using these for a lot of my items, especially guns and things. And just because of the way he looks here, I'm assuming he's supposed to be a metal type character there. We're going to give this a nice shake and try out my nice new wet palette that I tried for the first time yesterday. Squeeze out what I think will be enough to get this guy painted. And just going to use the same size brush on this one. Put some on there and just start covering up all the white spaces on there. And then what I'm going to do after that is use this shade on top of this, so it's kind of like a contrast, except it's just going to go in the cracks and give everything some depth. So a nice, quick and easy way to make things look a little bit better. Try not to stick my head underneath or into the camera. So just getting his feet around the stone. Also try not to stick my tongue out too far. Is that something everyone does, or just some people? Whenever you're painting like this, you got to have your tongue sticking out of your mouth in the right direction. Hello, Brad85. Thanks for joining the channel. Like I said, just trying something a little bit new, showing my process of painting. It is definitely time consuming. I took about, I don't know, a dozen miniatures yesterday just to prime them. Guess I could go over the spray I used for that. So right now I'm using an Army painter. I used to just use the stuff you could get at Walmart. Then I switched to this when I couldn't find any more of the stuff, and I found out, I guess the pigments size in this isn't as big. So it's a little bit better for small miniatures. And so I've been using that ever since. Of course, a lot of people are like to know the you prefer white, or should you prime in white, or should you prime black, gray, or whatever. To me, it just comes down to how bright do you want your miniatures. So if you prime in white, they should shine a little bit better. But of course, if you're going with a dark theme look, you might want to prime it in black. Then of course, a lot of people will prime it in black and then do what they call, I think it's zenithal. They'll come in and do some white overlays on it to try to get the light pattern on it. So a whole lot of different techniques, and like I said, it all just comes down to what are you happy with at the end of the day when you're sitting at the table. It's usually the first question we ask everyone when we get a new game at game night: why aren't these painted? Even if it's mini or meeples, that's just our running joke. Now, other people in my group, like Mike and Travis, they're definitely better at painting than I am. I don't know if it's because they've got better eyesight. It's probably part of it. They're more creative than I am. And like I said, it's a long process. Hello, Hero Apollo. Thanks. Appreciate you watching the channel. Just curious, how many of y'all, do y'all paint your miniatures? Or basically what it came down to me was, after playing with people that did paint their miniatures, peer pressure. The army of gray minis out on the board it just didn't cut it anymore. Now, of course, the contrast paints have only been out, I don't know, a year, maybe two. They've really made it a little bit easier. Before then, you had to prime it, do some highlighting, put some shades on it. Of course, now you can still do all those same steps. I mean, I'm kind of doing a combination of both here. And usually I have my face right on top of the mini. That didn't make for good camera angles. Like I said, shaky hand and bad eyesight. It's another reason why I like contrast paints. I have a lot of trust in them. Just put it on there and let them flow. Of course, this isn't a contrast, but after I get this shiny metal on here, we're going to put some Knoll oil on it, and that's really going to bring out some of the textures in the miniatures. Now, I think this is the first time this company has made minis. Like I said, they're known mainly for, well, of course, just Ascension, the card game. I wouldn't compare these up to CMON miniature types, and definitely not Warhammer stuff, but they are pretty good minis. I did like the fact that usually most miniatures come with the base, and the mini itself is the same color, so it's nice to have that come in. Two colors. So yeah, I spent yesterday, like I said, about an hour priming and then painting the bases black, just so they look like just like they came out of the box, but we want to put some prime on there so the paint kind of adheres a little bit better to it. Trying to get all his wings in here. And of course, after a while, even on the wet palette, the paint's going to stay wetter on that, but it does start to dry up on your brush. JJ making it in. How are you doing? I know he's an artist, but I think when he gets out his paintbrush, he's putting it on canvas and not so much on miniatures. I don't know. Mr. McManus, do you paint your miniatures there also? Need to watch Aeon's End Legacy playthrough. Yep, if you don't mind spoilers, go for it. I'll probably only be doing, well, I will only be doing that first initial playthrough, so some people can get an idea if that game is for them or not. It's one thing playing scenario-based games, so when you're playing Legacy, sometimes people get freaked out when it says right on this card. One of my best gaming moments was in another Legacy game when it said destroy this card, and I ripped it up in front of everybody, and everyone's eyes just popped out. Would have been funnier if it was someone else's game, but it was actually mine, so no big thing. So McManus got an art show coming up in Rhode Island. Nice. He did some painting back in his D&D days. Yeah, I'm buying those pre-painted. I'm getting super lazy when it comes to painting minis. This is usually something, I like the idea of painting miniatures, but the actual process, it's not something, it's usually I start doing it, it's like, why did I do this? But it is nice to get them out on the table. Painted miniatures are always a little bit better. All right, let's take a closer look and see all the places I missed. You know, this is usually the point where I stick them right up to my face, but I don't know if y'all want a close-up of the back of my head. So it looks like I've got good coverage on him. Sorry, taking a look at him. And we'll let that dry and then put the shade on it. And while we're painting metal, I think I had someone else. I had some metal in him. Nope, they're going brass. No other metal in the ones that I've got primed, other than we can go back to this guy. I know I want his sword. To be nice shiny metal. And I think the rest of it's going to be gold inlays. Oh, you want to see the back of his head? Did it look like I missed a spot? Yep, good eye there. I missed the shoulder. You save me from breaking that out later. Just a little bit around his fingers too. All right. I think he's good now. And see if there's anything else that I want to be silver and shiny on this guy. I think just his sword. All right. So let him sit a little bit longer. Oh, you want to see the back of my head? No, you don't want to see that. It's getting as gray as my beard. This is getting old stuff. It's doing funny things to the color of my hair and the body aches. The nerve damage, at least I can blame that on breaking my arm in 15 places. Needless to say, went outside, it was 40 degrees one right before Christmas. Didn't realize that on our back stoop, Sun has not hit the steps yet, and I had a big box in my hand. Hit that patch of ice, went feet up and flying down the 5 brick steps, came down on my arm. And now I've got some nice metal down in here. Don't know if you see the big scar in there. Nice long piece of metal, several screws holding things together. So my arm gets a little shaky. All right, so some other ones. I'll show you what I did the other day. Let me see here. Yes. This guy, Mechanic Champion. I'll admit building this was probably a bad idea. Core, well, we'll see how nasty he's going to be in the game. But last night he was a bigger miniature. So I went ahead and did the contrast paints on the big stone there. And then I used the brassy brass to get him covered up. And now to bring out the details, let's see here. I want to use Reikland Flesh Shade. So I'm just going to apply that generously all over this model here, and that's going to seep down into the cracks and kind of give it some depth. And then also looking on this, you can see, I mean, it's kind of a steampunkish thing. So it's got some fire burning inside. Now along his neck, probably splash some white on top of those, and his eyes, and maybe inside of his mouth. It's also got some vents on his shoulders. So I'll put some white on there and then some yellow to get that nice and bright, hopefully. But I think first I want to put the shade on there. So I can hide that for now. Grab a drink. Let me catch up on the chat here. Thank you. Your eyesight must be as good as mine. But no, like I said, it's all about table presence, and that's what I tell people. If you take the miniatures for table presence and take them this close, yeah, you're going to find some issues. But like I said, for table presence, 3 feet away, this is going to look fine. Got my trusty Gatorade here to keep me going. All right. So we've got our Reikland Flesh Shade. Give it a nice shake. And like I said, I'm just putting this everywhere. So I'm going for my bigger brush. And you probably will see the back of my head here, because now I've got to see how far I dip it in here. And I'm just going to start. Said apply it generously. It's very watery, so it's going to seep down in the cracks and give everything some depth. And it's also going to take some of the shine away. Now, if you do want your models to shine, I didn't always varnish my models, but now I'm doing that. I typically use a matte varnish, but if you want things to shine, you can use a gloss varnish. And one of the tricks you can get with those types of varnishes is, let's say you want to do the whole model in a matte finish, but you want the fire areas to shine. You can do that in a gloss varnish. So there you can kind of already see it's going into cracks and giving it some depth. I'm talking about the shine, like on this miniature. Don't know if you can see that on camera, but I used a gloss varnish on the fire to kind of give it more of a shine, whereas the rest of the mini doesn't, because that would just look weird. So that's one of the tricks with varnishes. Use a matte for everything if you want things to really pop out. So for fireballs, fire, even for snowy items. Like I did that also on this guy. I figured his beard has got to be a little bit frosty. So he's got some ice looking in there. Let's see here. I don't have a game with miniatures. For solo, would Nemesis be a good choice? I wouldn't mind painting a bit. I did one solo play in Nemesis. It was a bit, well, like I said, a lot of games come down to preference. And for me, for a solo game, I usually like them to last about 30 minutes or less is my preference. But if you got more time, I think that's a good solo game. You might want to play more than one character. I'm really having a great time with that game multiplayer. I've only played it full cooperative. We have a hard time cooperating to win a game. So playing that game where everyone has their own secret goals, haven't gone into that yet. Because everyone has secret goals, so one guy probably has to get the engines working and make it to Earth, while another guy's goal is probably to destroy the engines, and he just has to use the escape pod. All the while, you're trying not to die to all these aliens running around the ship. And I've always found that that's hard enough to do that without everyone working against each other. Especially with the group of people I play with. Usually if we're playing those semi-co-op games to where we're fighting against each other, it used to be Battlestar Galactica. That was one of the first games I got into, that and Dominion. Battlestar Galactica, first 2 times I played it, I never watched the show, and I really wasn't into board games at the time. I spent the first 2 games in the brig in that game. Because in that game, you're accusing everyone from being a Cylon, trying to blow up the ship. And I didn't know how to lie at the time. And since that was suspicious to them, they threw me in the brig, and that's where I stayed. Then I went and started watching the show and realized that is probably the most thematic board game I have ever played. And I got a little bit better playing the game. You definitely didn't need to watch the show to play the game, but it helps get you immersed in the story and what's going on. Now that game's been replaced with Unfathomable. So they cleaned up the rules a little bit and put an Arkham Horror type theme on it. I like the theme of Battlestar Galactica better, but I like Unfathomable's gameplay better. So we've been playing that a couple times too. So far, I've yet to be a human in that player, or in that game. All right. So just getting that on. Like I said, we don't want it to pull too much, but we're all right with some different looks in there. So take a look at how that's coming along. Coming up his back. Work on his neck here. So did also just get in Tiny Epic Dungeons. Thought about painting those, but then got the notice this game was on the way. So decided to wait for the bigger miniatures. And rumor is Massive Darkness 2 is also getting ready to ship. So there's another couple hundred miniatures to paint. But after I paint this game, I'll probably be done painting for a couple months. Like I said, I usually go through phases. And it's been a while since I painted some minis. All right, so let's see here. I think I want some more on this leg here. And then I'll start working on the wings, I think. Let's see, around his neck is looking all right. Head's looking pretty good. Didn't get underneath his jaws. All right, off to the wings. So this is probably just going to show mostly around the edges. Not much texture in the center there. Any other games you're all playing, or? So this weekend, I think we're going to get some Nemesis in. Of course, I'll get some Marvel Champions in. You usually show up at the game shop a little early. Me and another guy, Troy, been playing a lot of. He's my Marvel Champions guy at the moment. We started going through the Galaxy's Most Wanted again. No, not that one. The latest one. Mad Titan Shadow. I hadn't played Captain Marvel in multiplayer, so giving her a shot. Can't be as aggressive with her now. She needs to deal twice the amount of damage and help with threat removal a little bit. But yeah, this is painting miniatures if you haven't done that before. It can be time consuming. And like I said, you can make it as good. You can put as much time as you want into it. Because watching another guy online doing this painting, and he said he'll put 6 to 8 hours, 6 to 8 in one miniature. And I try to have several minis done in that amount of time. Of course, going this size miniature, they take a lot more time. But with that, by the time I'm done with that one, the paint should be dry on my other ones. But you can see doing this, it's bringing out the little cracks and details in the wings. Makes some people think we spend a lot of time doing some detail work, and when in reality, we just got some really wet paint and spread it all over and let gravity do the rest of the work. As some people say, play smarter, not harder. All right. So just applying that all over his wings. Then we're going to go back to prime and pretty much do the same thing with him, but with a different color. Or maybe, yeah, I'll let him dry a little bit more. We'll bring out another mini and start doing the base colors on that. So I think we've got him all washed up. Let everything sit in place and dry a bit. And move on to our next masterpiece. And yes, these, I think this paintbrush I got from Hobby Lobby or something like that. So it wasn't expensive at all. Some of these, I try to get those in sets of 3. They might run around $10 or something. All right, let's see here. We'll start working on this guy. So I think we're going to go brass for his body. Looks like he's got some purple around his guts and maybe a camouflaged cape around him. Oh, he's got some silver daggers. Could have painted those earlier. And a nice rifle. I like the look of this mini. He's got some good details in there. Extra set of arms and a nice camouflage cloak. So once again, I think I'll use a wash for the purple, and I'm just going to be generous and put that in there because I'm going to paint over it with the brassy brass. Then I'll use the contrast. I think they've got something kind of camo colored. So we'll start working on him. So let's see, some type of purple. Got a bright light in my face. Shades of purple. We've got a shyish purple, a mogus purple, and a pink. So we'll go for the middle. Give that a nice shake. Let's see, JJ. Last night I built an Ant-Man Wasp deck. Got from the same guy named Dale. You got the deck ideas from some guy named Dale? Or did you come up here and get in my stash and steal my boxes? All right, so just a little purple around his guts is what it looked like. Don't see purple anywhere else. So I guess kind of C3PO-like, where all his wires are coming through. So a quick swipe in there, and that should be done. And for this, like I said, I'm not too worried about staying in the lines, as I'm going to paint over it with a different, well, everything else around it's going to get painted in a different color. This is pretty light of a color. And we're going to be done with the purple for a while. The Marvel Champions database. Yep, I've loaded a few up there. I quit doing that. Most of my decks are pretty similar. I just swap out a couple cards in there depending on the hero I'm using. Let's see here, catch up on chat a little bit. Hello, Ryan. Thanks for stopping by. Cheers. Love the content. Currently painting my Batman Shadow of the Bat minis while watching. Oh, that's nice. I've done that too, where I put on some other guy painting, and so I sit there and paint. Shadows of the Bat. Is that from the animated TV show? I think that's one I didn't get myself, even though I looked at it for quite a while. McManus, or the Galaxy's Most Wanted. Let's see here. Got Warp's Edge today. That's a great solo-only game. Trying to understand the rule book. Yeah, I remember it got confusing on how the enemy ships worked at times. But it's a really fun game. Great bag builder if people haven't played that. Last night I built, oh yes, now I'm catching up. And I think the company that made Warp's Edge has something out on Kickstarter right now. A different solo game. I am passing on that one. Can't get them all. And that Marvel Zombies game has taken all the money I'm going to have for a while. Okay, reach across here. Going to go with the Militarum Green. This guy looks like a sniper, so that's what we're going to paint his cloak. Oh yeah, we'll go over. I painted this guy last night also too. So it's hard looking at the picture if you're supposed to be a white or a blue dragon. So there's 4 factions basically in this game. See if we can take a look here. Got the Mechanas. Basically bronze looking, life bound with green, enlightened with blue. So yeah, I've got a water gin back here. Might be getting to him sometime soon. Then we got some unbounds with these people. Can't tell if they're white, kind of bluish. Some flaming wings, a demon slayer. That guy's all purpley, but his miniature doesn't look like he should be painted that way. So I'm undecided on what I'm going to do with him. If I'll go all purple like the artwork, or just put in some purple and maybe put his armor in a leather brown. But the voids are a lot of purpley colors. And of course, this guy is just a monk sitting on top of the head there. So I'll probably go back in and highlight some white. It's got a tooth hanging out there. Definitely don't want that blue. So hit his eyeballs in a bit. Let's see here. Painting question. Do you put mixing balls in your paint? No, I don't. I probably should, especially the game color stuff I have, because I've probably had this for several years. But basically, you can get a paintball put in here, and it definitely helps loosen them up. But I haven't done that yet. Do you use them, Stuart? Can you? Also bought one of these things. Haven't started using it yet. Maybe we'll try it with this guy. See if it helps my fingers for the painting job. You can click it in there and get a better hold. I'm trying new things. All right, see how steady my hand can be going around his legs. Like I said, I am going to be going over this with the brassy brass color, so if I get a little bit outside the line, it's not going to matter that much. Painting Zombie Galactus will definitely be a task. Isn't that the truth? I like what, I don't think I've got the money. Jesse at Quackalope took his to a professional painter to get his done. I'd love to go up there and talk him out of that, but I don't think that's going to happen. I have to go to Lowe's paint store and get a gallon of paint for that miniature. So he uses the mixing balls. Yeah, I saw them at the store. Might need to pick me up some. Like I said, a lot of the paints I've had for years. So I go through phases. It's weird. People say, well, if you don't like painting, why do you do it? And I was like, well, I don't like Army of Gray miniatures on the table either. And usually, I've learned my lesson. I wait till after I play a game before I start painting minis. I know one game I painted a bunch of the miniatures, played the game, and I was like, you know what? I don't like this. And here I spent 2 weeks painting all the minis in the game. But this one, I love deck building, so I feel pretty confident I'll be all right with the painting job. It's just, am I going to paint them all or just some of them? That's another thing. It gets funny too. Get a game and pull it out, and people say, you're not done yet. And I got to tell them, yep, you're right. There comes a point where I can't wait anymore, and I actually want to play the game. Which game is it? You talked about the one that I painted and found out I didn't like. That was Solomon Kane. I did like the system. It just comes down to, I'm starting to realize I don't like long story-driven campaign type games. I'm more of I want to play a one-shot type deal, or maybe something that's only 5 games in to get a campaign in. I'm going off screen with this extra arm here. So it's funny how your priorities in gaming will change after a while. And of course, running a channel sometimes, that makes changes too. Especially when you start getting 5 Kickstarters show up at your door. You don't know which one to go to first. So you've got to make some hard decisions there. What games did show up? I had Lord of the Rings, a card game, pre-ordered. And then I had Tiny Epic Dungeons came. And then Aeon's End, Legendary came. And I feel like there was another game that showed up. And of course, this just showed up a week after they came. So trying to explain. Well, my wife's kind of used to boxes showing up at the door all the time now. But sometimes you got to tell her, I paid for those a year ago. Hey, Stacy. Just tried the 4th Battle of Aeon's End New Age and got crushed, then had to watch my playthrough. I feel more prepared. Yeah, that game, depending on how the Nemesis cards come out and what pair up you've got going, that can be a tough game for sure. Which Nemesis was it? Or do you remember their names? I probably won't. Remember the one that looked like a bunny rabbit? That was weird. Trying to keep his ears in check. So, Stuart, have you been playing that game also? I've played it 3 times now. 2 times I made it to the Act 2. That's a tough one, but I really enjoy it. It's my favorite Tiny Epic game. I haven't had the greatest track record with them. I keep wanting to like them. Fenrix, yeah, I remember him being tough. New Age, yeah, that's the one that started the kind of a set of, 4-place scenario. And of course, now they've got their revamped version of Aeon's End on Kickstarter. I think it ended today, though. Astro Knights or something like that. And yes, I did back it. I have very little self-control, even after Marvel Zombies. So I love this camo green, just the way it comes in there. So it's already setting in and making it look like I did something special to get the paint job, when in reality I'm just putting the wet paint on here and letting gravity do the work. Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing around those legs. I'm definitely not going to be able to paint that on camera. So like I said, you just be looking at the back of my head with me trying to need one of those magnifying things. But that's going to make me feel old. All right, see what we've got going in there. If that will focus on him. So, I mean, he'll start popping once I start getting the metal in there, but the cloak's coming in nicely. Let's see. Can't find any copies anywhere. Set of New Age. Yeah, Nemesis is another game it's hard to find copies of. Anyone else doing any Kickstarter games? Like I said, I went in for Astro Knights. And today I also went in on 51st State. I've been looking at that for a long time, but a lot of the expansions were hard to find. But now you can get them all at once, and the new one coming up. So I know Z Garcia has spoken very highly of that game. Monster Apocalypse. Remember that when that first came out. Played some of that. But I did not back the Kickstarter, the new version of it. All right, let me see where I'm missing on him. I need to squeeze in around his head. And I can't tell if the cloak goes under him or not. Under his chin. Where'd my reference go? Yep, I think it does. Yeah, if I was trying to do this whole thing in contrast, I'd be all over the place. Sometimes it's nice to know I don't have to paint in the lines. So you got Outcast. It's not as good in my opinion. The small boxes are pretty good. Yeah, to me, kind of like Shadows of Brimstone and Aeon's End, I have a hard time telling people which ones they should get and which not. To me, it's kind of like which character looks cool, that's the expansion you should get. In some games, I just like going in the order they were released. Does Into the Wild go with New Age? I'd have to look on the internet. I feel like it did, but I don't want to say yes or no. I'm not 100% sure. I know a lot of the big boxes did come out with at least one, if not two, small expansions. All right, let's see here. Where have I missed his cape? Where's Camo? Looks like I got it around his head and looks pretty full on the back. So to me, that's why I like contrast paints. They just do all the hard work. So before, you used to have to paint it all one color and then come back in with a wash and then do some highlights. Whereas now, I mean, some highlights probably would still be good to come in here. But a lot of times it just comes down to how much time do you have on your hands. All right, we'll let him sit for a while. I tried the new Army Painter ones. No, that's on my list. I've been watching some other painters and what they're doing with, what do they call them, the speed paints. They look like they're almost identical in what they do. The one thing I have noticed, it almost looks like on flat surfaces, like with this guy, if you use the contrast, it looked like it showed more detail, or it had more imperfections, which made it seem like it had more detail, whereas the speed paints kind of stayed flat. So just depending on the look you're going for. So I was planning on using speed paints to kind of like fill in the gaps of colors, because I know for me, the greens and the contrast, they don't have a light green. And I feel like I really want that. I'm not totally in love with the skin colors they have. So we've got this, Guilliman Flesh and the Dark Oath Flesh. What I used to use for my skin colors was a Pale Flesh and then use the Reichland Flesh Shade. So these are darker than what I want. But then again, they're not as dark as using the dark flesh tone. So like I said, depending on the color scheme I'm going for, you can tell how long I've had that one sitting there, everything separating. Probably will have to get some of those metal balls Stuart was talking about. Dry brush and call it a day. Yep, I might not even go that far. So I want to play the game. So Tyler, have you been able to try the speed paints and the contrast? I looked for them last week at my game shop and they didn't have them yet. So now they're getting distributed at different times in different places, it seems like. All right, we're going to take this guy off of my new handle and put this guy back on. And I want my known shade. If I can find out where I hit it, there we go. So in case you came in late, what I used on this one, let's see. I used the gray for the base. Basically looks like he's getting ready to fly off a mountaintop. Can't tell that much difference on the camera. Then the gunmetal for the rest of him. Don't want to tip that over. Now I'm going to use the non-oil to kind of bring out all the details on this guy. And I'll probably end my painting here after this guy focuses in. Usually I paint until my neck starts hurting. So I'll just start applying this pretty generously. Just going up his legs there. Bring this a little closer so I can actually see in there. So Tyler, let's see here. Have the contrast. Lazy at painting though, and bad at it. Like I said, it's not being so much bad at it, it's how much time do you want to put in there. Have a mini vise to hold your figures is a painter's equivalent of sleeving your cards. Yeah, I've got a deck building game. I'm going to sleeve them. I get picked on the games that aren't deck builders that don't sleeve. Yeah, my game group likes to pick, but I give it back just as good as they give it to me. Am I interested in Arc Nova? I looked at that game. I know that game is super popular right now. I just don't think it's my style of game. I like the artwork, the cards. The things that drew me back was, isn't it like an hour and a half for gameplay? And of course, I'm weird like that. Like I said, if I'm playing solo, I usually want my games to 30 to 60 minutes. And then I just start losing interest. I'm one of those people. It's hard to keep my interest. ADHD. Yelling squirrel. But multiplayer games, Battlestar Galactica, Unfathomable, they'll take a couple hours. and I can stay locked in on that game, no problem. So you can really see, and to get this thing to focus in, maybe. Yeah. So it's really starting to fill in the cracks there. So this is the two-step process versus going with contrast, which is a one-step process, but they just don't have the shiny metals. So Stacy, have you played Arc Nova? I watched Brant over at Step Into the Portal play it. It looked like a really cool game. Like I said, I'm starting to learn. I've got 3 shelves that I have for gaming, and they are all full. And I have about 35 to 40 Kickstarter games that are supposed to be arriving. So needless to say, I have to be wiser on my purchases. And I've got to do a major cull. So luckily, my game store, I live in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The game store I go to is in Stanton. So depending on traffic, it's 30 to 40 minutes. They're doing what they call a swap meet next week. So basically, we can bring in our games, put them on the table, they'll sell them, and we get store credit. So tomorrow, I'm going to have about 2 shelves worth of board games, or not tomorrow, but next week, and hopefully sell most of those. Not so much looking for a lot of money, I just need a lot of space. All right, so I think I'm getting this guy. Yeah, it's kind of showing up there on screen. I think I've got him about where I want him. So I just wanted to show everyone my process for painting. Like I said, it is time consuming. I think someone said, I do the lazy man paint jobs. I just want some color on them. And even the first guy I started with, honestly, if I got down to the point to where I didn't want to do a bunch of detailed paints, just priming them and putting one wash on them. I don't think I'd use the white. I think if I was doing something like that, I would go with the gray color. If I was just going to do a shade, because that's just going to bring out the details. And that way you really don't have to go into all the different coloring steps. Well, I'll go one step on here. Got some areas. We'll go over the process of doing a dry brush. We'll see what we can get going on him. So dry brushing, basically that process. Let me take a look at my reference. Like I said, it looks like he's just got a white cloak with gold inlays. And it's not really that textured on here. About the only thing I think we're going to dry brush is going to be his sheath for his dagger. And maybe his arm. Yeah, he's not going to be as cool as I thought for dry brushing. We'll go through that process real quick. We'll break out my polished gold. Let me see here. My collection needs a Euro. It's either going to be Arc Nova or Feast for Odin. I tell you what, I've looked at Feast at Odin a lot. It looks like it's fun, but I don't have anyone that would actually play that game, and I think I'd rather play your copy of it. So, McManus, you should buy Feast for Odin and have a art show down in Virginia, and we'll hook up, and you can teach me how to play Feast for Odin. Yeah, I think they have it at the game store I go to all the time. $100. I keep wanting to get it, but I don't think I am. Like I said, my group, we're not Euros, and honestly, I usually don't either. I think I want to like Euros, I just don't. See, it's sort of game that you wish you still have. Yes, and then I rebought it later. Tyrants of the Underdark was a game that I sold. I had the original version of the game, and my game group just wasn't playing it. Of course, it's a combination deck builder along with area control. And area control is not a big... I typically don't like area control games, and they didn't either. But then the second edition came out that came with the expansion. So I picked that up, and now I have it again. And Mike from the One Stop Co-op Shop made a solo version of it, and I really enjoyed that. All right, so dry brushing. I went for a thicker brush. Some people use makeup brushes for this, but my wife will laugh at me if I go steal her makeup stuff. And what you do is you put some paint on it, and then you wipe the paint off. So just light brush on a paper towel or something. Pick up your miniature, and then just lightly brush across it. And it's going to catch on some of the edges. So I'll just go ahead and see if I can get his armor. Maybe not get his cloak. Basically what this does is it's going to catch the raised edges unless you're pressing too hard. And I don't know if that's shown up too well on the camera. So there's two ways of doing this. You can get a really fine brush and do it line by line, or you can cheat by dry brushing. So just go over some of the raised areas. A little bit of paint on that. Then wipe most of the paint off. And yeah, it looks like we've got some texture there on the top of his armor. It's funny looking at the artwork, it looks like he's got raised armor all over the place. But the mini didn't get the memo. But it's working in some places. I'm trying to stay off of his cloth. Just hit what I think is his main armor. And of course, the nice thing about painting, if you mess it up, I can go in there with some white and do it again. There we go. So it's not showing up the best with the white, but that is the process of dry brushing. So you can see some of the highlights in there. I'll probably go back in, and when I get my face in a little bit closer, definitely got to do his beard. And probably put some more gold on his scabbard. Let's see here. We're getting invited to someone's game room. You're invited to my game room when I finish it. Nice. Stacy, yeah. Can we bring our cats? Hey, one of the games I want to sell is Isle of Cats. Any takers? I'd like to get rid of the 3 cats I have here too, but my wife says they're not going anywhere. Uh, 4 cats and a dog. How's the dog feel about that situation? Army Painter makes a nice dry brush set. I might have to try some of those out. Like I said, with the contrast, I generally don't have to do it, I think if I did get a lighter green, that would definitely make some of this really pop. It's just an extra step. So Stuart, what are you painting at the moment? And do you live in Virginia, and do you want to paint someone else's minis? Asking for a friend. All right. I think we're good for now on that. All right, so I've been looking down a bit much. The neck says it's time to take a break for painting. So that's usually what it comes down to. Either my neck starts hurting from looking down, or my eyes from looking too hard, or it's time to eat. So that's usually my triggers to stop painting. So Hugo is a Belgian sheepdog. He attempts herding Officer Pup. Got your dog trying to herd 4 cats. Well, we'll be anxious to see how many cats Stacy brings over and sees if Hugo can take care of them. But for now, I'm going to go take a break and come back and finish my painting maybe later tonight around midnight. Maybe eat some popcorn. But wanted to thank everyone for showing up and helping me through the process. Like I said before, this isn't my favorite thing to do, but I do like looking down at the table and not seeing so much gray or just plain white figures. So as always, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next playthrough.